Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ListNing Project. I am your host, Shakiya Gadson. Let's talk about what the ListNing Project is. The ListNing Project is a space for people to come and listen to conversations with people from all walks of life and talk about the life experience. The majority of the people that you'll find on this platform are men because I feel like um, men often have this notion or societal belief that there are no safe spaces for them to discuss issues that really impact them and really affect how they see the world and how they interact with the people within it. So this project is really just to give people an unfiltered view of what the male experience is like. Um, Sometimes there will be other people or other participants of this project that are not of the male gender, and that's okay. Um, as long as the premise is to get a better understanding of different types of relationships and how they uh, are seen and how they are impacting our overall human experience. So today we're going to be talking about something that might not be as popular of opinion for women or young ladies or people that might not be of initial benefit. But I really feel like it's an important topic that needs to be talked about and it needs to be express further. So there'll probably be more in depth conversations with other people. But for right now, while I am able to clearly get the thought out, I wanted to have some time with my viewers just to discuss it a little bit, just to get the ball rolling on it. And so the topic for tonight is men and the space that they need when they are going through major transitions. And while I say that that's probably not a popular topic or something that a lot of women want to hear about, looking through many years of being in a relationship and talking to different men within my life, the common theme is that there's never really a space for them to sit and work through the things that they need to work through when they're going through transitions without feeling like they're being stretched too thin or that you're not actually able to, you know, dedicate the time that they really need to in order to pursue those things. Case in point, most married men or men that are in relationships do so in the most inopportune time for them. A lot of them are going through some life changes where they are trying to establish how to get to their source of income or they're transitioning into their own level of responsibility for themselves. Many don't even have their own place of residence by themselves before they get into a relationship. Now, just think about that. A young man, let's say in early to mid 20s, maybe even early 30s. So, this is the time period where a lot of men are really acquiring their first real job that they can provide for themselves. They're no longer relying on a mom or a dad or a grandmother or whoever to take care of their basic living needs. Um, And this is honestly the time when most of them get into their first real relationship. And that often comes with the expectation that at some point you're going to live with a person or we're going to be spending a significant amount of time together and we're discussing what life is going to look. And we think about that and we take that into perspective and it's like, man, this is the time where this young man is really trying to establish who he is. There really isn't, or this really isn't a good time for them to be trying to decide who I am for someone else. They're going to make a lot of, you know, quick decisions on what kind of money to make, how to make the money. Um, do I go for a career? Do I go for the thing that I dreamed about doing and love and see if that works out? There's a lot of factors that go into it, but then we take into account the relationship aspect of it. And most women, if we're being honest, at that period of time are also going through their own major transition of trying to decide what kind of woman they feel like they're going to be, because that doesn't usually pan out. What you feel like you are versus what you end up being later on. Um, but now you're taking that aspect and you're putting that on your partner as well, as they are oftentimes taking on a daddy role. You are my new dad, so you are responsible for taking on all these things that, whether I had a dad or I didn't have a dad, this is now your new role. And we never really look at how that impacts or stifles their path that they would have gone on if they were able to um, have a female companion, but that didn't require them to divide themselves up in such a way that their passion and their purpose and their own life path is not impacted as much. As a person that has, for all of my adult life, been in a relationship, I understand now how that changes the dynamics of the relationship when the person never really gets to pursue the things that they feel like they needed to pursue in their own life. Oftentimes that leads to a lot of resentment. Um, and I really feel like if we look at what people call men in midlife crises, it's really when they look at their mortality and they say, you know what, I never got a chance to do this because I've been following behind other people, or being for other people and not necessarily for myself, and life is getting ready to pretty much end for me, or the life where I had enough energy and spunk and drive and heart to just jump out on these things, that time is rapidly approaching to where I'm not going to be able to do it anymore, or not the same amount of vigor. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And a lot of times in society, we look at them and we're like, man, that's so irresponsible of them, and they can't do this. But we don't really look at all the pieces of the puzzle that led to them making such a quick and brash decision. Um, I know for myself, my spouse has had dreams in different stages of his life doing music. And I can think back in times where I absolutely impeded that process. Not because I didn't believe in him, or um, I didn't see the benefit of it, but I was going through my own transition and looking at my partner in a way that was more so like, how dare you want to pursue these things over here, and I need love and reassurance. And not really being able to receive the love and reassurance that I was looking for, because I didn't realize, or I didn't even really want to realize, the amount of effort that it took to pursue your own dream. And so that caused a lot of, like I said, resentment and anger and disconnect in our relationship at various points in time because I wasn't aware. Very few women are taught or even introduced to the idea that there is a whole nother life within this human that you are choosing that doesn't necessarily require your input or your presence. And sometimes you being there is actually a hindrance. They got to think about how they're presented, how you're going to take it. Um, Depending on your level of maturity, are they going to have to talk differently in front of people because you might get jealous? Or do you have a set time for them to be in because you feel like, oh, there's nothing that can possibly be a benefit going on past a certain time? Do you give them the freedom to travel freely? And these are all things that come with maturity and, understanding that just because this is happening over here does not mean that this person can't feel and love you in the way that they said. Like the two do not have to be mutually exclusive. Um, But again, that comes with maturity, and a lot of women do not have that um, at the time that they too embark on these relationships, or my man, my man, my man. But I'm not really looking at my man as an individual. I'm looking at them as a collective, or they are, you know, an extension of me. So, however I see myself, I'm going to put that on them. And sometimes their path does not need that, doesn't want it, but it's hard to tell someone that you honestly do love, like, hey, you're messing up my progress. Like, you are slowing me down. If I did not have you to worry about or consider, I would be 10, 12 light years ahead of where I am. But because I can't do that without losing you, or very few women are willing to understand that unless they themselves are getting to their bag, which is a whole nother topic. But very few women, especially young women, are able to separate and understand. And now, once a man has gone through this transition as a young man and they found their stride, we also have to look at the second part of their life where another transition happens, where it might be a career shift, and the way in which they made money before, they might have to reinvent themselves, or they lost a job, or um, they have gotten out of this survival mindset of, I've been doing this job for this long because this is what's putting food on my table. And now I have a little bit of breathing room where I want to actually pursue not a job, but a career. And maybe that career change might require them going back to school, um, relocating, or whatever it is. And that is another transition in which they need time. Now, during this time, they might be in knee deep in a marriage or a relationship that is on its way to marriage. And just the idea of shaking that up and saying, there are some things that I need to work out. And I need to be able to have a level of solitude in order to do that is often very hard for them to do or say. Um, because, again, the thought is if you're doing this alone, then you've abandoned your post or you've abandoned your family. And oftentimes that's not the case. It really is, I need clarity in how to plan this out. And in the beginning, it might not require the other person to be involved, be present. Um, Sometimes it's just being the cheerleader on the sideline is all that's required. But it's hard for men to have those conversations because, again, we get back to the provider, protector presence that we put on men, but we don't really look at how daunting of a task that is, especially when you are going through a transition. And I'll go back to my original statement, not saying that this is not something that affects women, but societally and communally and historically, the way that this plays out looks significantly different for men. And I truly believe that we as a community, as people in relationships, um, people that are aspiring to relationships, if we understand where the man is in life and what they're going through and what those steps may require, I think we can make a better gauge on whether to jump into a relationship or to consider starting a relationship or putting a pause on a relationship based on that transition. Um, and again, it doesn't require leaving the person or just imploding or exploding the relationship. We gotta be over. You gotta go your way because you trying to abandon me, or oh, if we haven't done this in 2 years, you're not serious about me. Let's take into account all of the things that are going into what is happening in that man's life. And is your level of need based on necessity for them, or is it a internal thing within yourself that you're putting on? Now, don't get me wrong, there are some men that are going to run from commitment or are commitment phobes, and those are not the men that we're talking about. I am talking about a man that is truly going through a transition that may be of their own doing and oftentimes is not. But they need that space to work through that in a safe space where they're not constantly being berated for not being present, and also in an honest space where they can, no kidding, breathe while going through the process and not worry about whether everything that they have worked for is going to abandon them or leave them or desert them in the process. Um, and I know a lot of women are not going to want to hear that, but it's the truth. We have a lot of things that we put on our male partners. Sometimes it's a part of what they say to us is um, wrapped up in their purpose or what they believe their purpose to be. But we also need to be able to call in an audible and say, hey, I know that this is what we started off with, but currently that's not really working. You need this over here in order for you to work through this. And if you keep track with home base and check in and make sure that everything is good, or that, you're not completely abandoning your situation and just living life without the other person, like check in every once in a while, how are things going, da 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 da. But still pursuing what it is that you need to pursue, I really feel like that would make things a lot easier. Um, I think the conversations would be different because you have a lot more to offer other than anger, resentment, confusion, um, distrust, um, envy, in that you feeling like I'm missing out on these key moments where I should be more present for myself. But how dare I say that because then I look like the bad guy. I think women need to do a better job of being honest with themselves as to why, when we know that a person that we care about is going through these transitions, why we don't acknowledge that transition and offer up real solutions that, again, may not benefit us. We need to do a better job of looking at that. Why are we not offering up these spaces? Why is what we're providing at the end of the day more beneficial to us or self-serving, but we're pretending like it isn't? And do we honestly want the best for that person? Or is it the best but conditional? I think once we start having those honest conversations, real conversations with ourselves and our person, and not just our person, but the men in our lives, then we open up another level of safe space where they can communicate with us and we can start understanding um, what's really happening behind the scenes. And so, as I said before, I will be diving deeper into this conversation with men to see if what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling is on par. I could be way off, but from what I've noticed and gathered just in small glimpses of conversation, I feel like I'm spot on. But I would like to get, the male voice involved in this conversation to see exactly where these things have, impacted relationships and how things could have turned out a little bit different if maybe they had been given that space to do that. So I'm about to close out, but tune in to the next episode where I talk about this conversation a little bit more in depth with an actual man to find out if I'm on par or if I'm just losing it. But again, tune in again to the ListNing Project. Peace.